Because the fact of the matter is, we're in trouble as a global civilization. There are a lot of things coming at us very quickly. The environmental crisis is upon us, is very real, and is going to radically change the way we live our lives over the next decades. In fact, the things we choose to do within the next 10 years, and the things we choose not to do in the next 10 years, will define in bedrock what the planet will look like in 100 years. That's not a kind of time lag we're used to thinking about as a civilization. So we have a whole new set of challenges, and we have to start thinking differently. The issues we're facing of global poverty, of disease, sickness, from the avian flu to the AIDS epidemic, these are not isolated things anymore. Everything we do and do not do affects the entire system, closed system that is the planet Earth. And faced with such magnitude of need and of change and of potential for disaster, it's easy to sit back and say, well, this is way too big for me to deal with. This is way too big for any one of us to handle. Hopefully the governments will be doing something. Hopefully the big multinationals who control the planet will take care of something, because sure as hell I'm not going to be able to do anything as an individual. And it's that exact throwing up of the hands and giving up which is so dangerous right now. It's exactly the opposite that is needed. We need to see a world in which individuals step up and take charge. Not take charge of the rest of the world. Take charge of their own lives and of their own decisions and their own space that they occupy within this planet, upon this planet, and what they choose to do with it. What does that mean? That means being a smarter consumer, means being a smarter voter, means being a better citizen. But thinking about the whole and not just our individual place within it. But to know that the things that we do as individuals, as small as they may seem, is the only thing that is going to change the world. And the best way to get someone to see the impact and the breadth of that world is to get out there, to discover it, to throw yourself into it, to talk to strangers. We all grow up with, don't talk to strangers. Well, talk to strangers. You talk to a stranger for 5 minutes, they're no longer a stranger. This importance of engaging, of getting outside of our own bubbles, is really something that Canada is extraordinarily well positioned to promote. We really are an amazing country. We have this tremendous potential, this tremendous opportunity to provide the world with a lot of answers to the questions it's struggling with without even clearly articulating. How do you make a culturally plural country work? How can you make multiculturalism happen for real? How can you balance social justice with individual rights? How can you seek out a country that works? Well, maybe it's because of our original modest goals, not like the United States looking for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All we wanted was peace, order, and good government. How boring is that? Well, somewhere along the way, we ended up finding and valuing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness by looking for peace, order, and good government, simply getting along, being polite, raising your hand at the UN before you want to speak. I mean, there's this image that Canada has and that Canadians have of themselves as these great peacekeepers, as these great keepers of the world's moral authority, and Canada will pronounce itself on one thing or another thing and wait with bated breath for the world to, well, ignore us. And the fact of the matter is, it really frustrates me. Because we could be and we should be such a model, such an amazing example of what works. If only we could, A, tell more people about it, but B, and I guess before A, make it work properly for ourselves. So how do we do that? How we do that is to look into ourselves and look into our values and look into our individual responsibilities as citizens of the country, citizens of the world, and step up and to start thinking long term and to start thinking responsibly and to start understanding that everything each and every one of us does matters. Because when we find ourselves to be relevant, when we find that the things that we do are making a difference, well, then life gets a whole lot better. When we are doing something in which we can follow our passion, which we can believe, in which we know that life is meaningful and that our lives are heading in a proper direction, that we are building a country that matters, then things fall into place. So it's time to stop worrying about closing oneself off. It's time to stop putting up barriers. It's time to stop excluding others. It's time to stop looking at ourselves and our worlds and our mandates narrowly. It's time to start thinking big. Because the fact of the matter is, civilizations throughout history have always risen and fallen. Egypt rose and fell, to be replaced by Greece, which rose and fell, which was replaced by Rome, which rose and fell. And the British Empire rose and fell, and the Americans are rising, and they seem to think they'll never fall. But the fact of the matter is, every civilization has a natural ebb and flow. But the fact that people tend not to realize right now is things are different. Because our world is right now pretty much one civilization. Lots of identities, lots of inequities, lots of balances. But if there is a fall, everyone falls together. Of course, the people who fall hardest and first are the ones who aren't getting any benefits from this civilization right now, in the developing countries particularly. But we will all collapse together. And somehow, humanity is going to have to break out of this pattern that has been the story of our lives, the story of our entire history. And how do we do it? We do it by opening our eyes and opening our hearts to others, to difference, to diversity, to discovery, to challenging oneself, to being passionate about what can happen in the world if we only believe, if we begin to think responsibly about where we're going and start acting that way. What role do each and every one of us have to play? Well, we are fortunate as Canadians. Those of you here who aren't Canadians, you're fortunate to be in Canada today. We are fortunate to be aware, to be educated, to have food in our bellies. We are fortunate to have jobs that allow us to help other people open their minds and their hearts to the world.